Bangladesh is second only to China in producing clothing for the world.
Textile is one of the key economic sectors for us in Bangladesh.
Has been one of the primary engines of growth in the nation of 164 million people.
হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ গাইজ আসসালামু আলাইকুম আপনারা কেমন আছেন আশা করি সবাই ভালো আছেন আমি জুনেদ আপনারা দেখতেছেন জুনেদ আলী অফিশিয়াল আমি আপনাদের জন্য আরেকটি ভিডিও প্লে করতেই যাচ্ছি সবাই দেখবেন आशा करी सबाई देखबें भालो लगबे आज बात करने वाले हैं हाउ बांग्लादेश सीक्रेट स्ट्रेटजी मेड इन रिच बिजनेस केस स्टडी आज बात करने वाले हैं कि बांग्लादेश के अमीर होने की बांग्लादेश की मईशत के बारे में और बांग्लादेश की स्ट्रेटजी के बारे में कि बांग्लादेश की स्ट्रेटजी क्या है बांग्लादेश किस तरह बिजनेस कर रहा है और किस तरह रीच हो रहा है आज इसी हवाले से वीडियो है कि इंडियन मीडिया इसके ऊपर क्या बात करता है इंडियन ब्रोकर किस तरह बांग्लादेश के प्रोडक्ट के ऊपर फ़ायदा कमा रहे हैं और किस तरह क्रेडिट ले रहे हैं बांग्लादेश की कामयाबियों का क्रेडिट आज भारतीय ब्रोकर ले रहे हैं अमेरिका के साथ ट्रेड के अंदर भी आज भारतीय ब्रोकर शामिल हैं और किस तरह बांग्लादेश की मेहनत के ऊपर आज भारतीय ब्रोकर फ़ायदा उठा रहे हैं आज इसी में समझेंगे तो वीडियो की तरफ बढ़ने से पहले आप दोस्तों से गुजारिश है अगर आप चैनल पर नए हैं तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें साथ बने बेल आइकॉन को भी दबाएं ताकि आपको वीडियो का नोटिफिकेशन सबसे पहले मिलता रहे चलें वीडियो स्टार्ट करते हैं जी हैव वी गो
Bangladesh is second only to China in producing clothing for the world.
Textile is one of the key economic sectors for us in Bangladesh because it brings almost 80% of our foreign currency.
It has been one of the primary engines of growth in the nation of 164 million people. The industry earns more than $35 billion a year from exports and employs 4 million people, a large majority of whom are women.
Hi everybody! In the 1950s, right after its independence, Bangladesh was one of the poorest countries in the world. And from our previous video, you already know that in the past 50 years, Bangladesh has gone from being a poverty-infected country with a poverty rate of 80% to becoming one of the fastest growing countries in the world with a GDP of $400 billion and a poverty rate of less than 12%. And one of the most important reasons for this growth is the textile revolution of Bangladesh, because of which this country went from being a no one to becoming the second largest ready-made garment exporter in the world. In fact, from 2011 to 2019, Bangladesh textile export has more than doubled from just $14.6 billion in 2011 to $33.1 billion in 2019. And even in 2020, they exported $28 billion worth of garments. And all of this happened because of the extraordinary policies implemented by the government of Bangladesh. So the question is, what were these policies? How did they turn Bangladesh into the second largest exporter of ready-made garments? And most importantly, what are the study materials to help you understand the incredible rise of Bangladesh? This video is brought to you by Wintwealth, but more on this at the end of the video. So, let's start from the basics. Now, if you remember from our Sri Lanka episode, if an underdeveloped nation wants to grow, what are the steps? Number 1, identify an important asset within the country. Number 2, use that asset to create value in the global economy. Number 3, then create a strong clientele for cash flow. Number 4, use this cash flow to create more assets and then add more value to the global economy, and then the cycle will keep continuing. In case of Dubai, they identified oil, sold it to the world, made money, then expanded to maritime trade facilities. Then they made money again and then built their business ecosystems. But in case of Bangladesh, the case was a little different. You see, when you've got an asset like oil, which is not available elsewhere in large quantities, you can actually command a price tag over your asset and then make money. In this case, the Middle Eastern countries actually formed something called the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, as in a formal cartel. And using this cartel, they actually started commanding the price that they want. As a result, endless amount of money actually flooded into the Middle East. But in case of Bangladesh, their asset was cheap labor because ever since independence, the Bangladeshis did not get any opportunity to find jobs at home. So in case of labor, the catch is that you're always in competition with a rival to grab the opportunity. In this case, Bangladesh was in direct competition with none other than China itself. To tell you about it, in 1978, the Chinese had just opened up their economy and they literally became the manufacturing hub of the world for not just textile but every other industry. Now, usually, if you take any industry, they do not generally rely on just one country, but diversify their outsourcing into different countries for manufacturing. This is done so that in case if one country gets into trouble, like Russia did or like Pakistan did, then their operation would not be entirely halted. In case of the textile industry, companies like Zara or other companies usually outsource their projects to countries like China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Bangladesh. Now, during the 1980s and 90s, China was hands down the leader of manufacturing, and because of its ultra cheap labor cost, they were by far the first preference for any country to set up their manufacturing unit. But during that time, even Bangladesh was slowly and steadily improving, and they did everything in their capacity to build a conducive business ecosystem in Bangladesh. And in order to do that, they brought in some incredible policies that addressed three of the most critical problems faced by the businessmen in Bangladesh. The first of this problem was the unavailability of credit to buy machinery, which means if a businessman is just starting up and he needs machinery worth 50 to 60 lakhs, the banking system was too rigid to offer these loans to businessmen even if they had a sure shot at profit. Secondly, even after this machinery is paid for, the import duty was another big barrier. In this case, even if a low import duty of 5% is applied on a machinery worth 10 crores, that itself is 50 lakhs of import duty. And this was a big entry barrier for any businessman to start his business. And lastly, there was infrastructure issue, as in, even if your factory is completely built, if there are frequent power shortages, then it leads to loss in productivity. If you do not have good highways in your country, then it leads to logistic issues, which again causes losses. These were the three critical problems that were being faced by the businessmen of Bangladesh, because of which they were not able to start a business, because of which they were not able to employ more people. As a result, the economy itself was taking a hit. This is when the Bangladesh government actually realized that they have to do something if they want to grow and progress. This is when the Bangladeshi government actually came up with three incredible policies that changed the face of Bangladesh forever. The question is, what were these policies and how did they suddenly change the face of Bangladesh? Well, the first policy the Bangladeshi government came up with was something called back-to-back letter of credit system. Now let's try to understand how this works using a simple story. Let's say there is a company A, that is a company in the US and sells heavy textile machinery. Company B is a trading firm that is based in India and has learned that company C in Bangladesh wants to purchase heavy machinery worth 5 crore rupees. So if you see in this arrangement, the buyer wants to buy, the seller wants to sell, and the broker wants to make money. But the problem over here is that the US company does not trust company C in Bangladesh because it is an underdeveloped nation and any political or communal rift might actually put 5 crore rupees at risk. But you see, the Indian broker B wants to ensure that the trade is made so that he receives his commission. So here's where the back-to-back letter of credit comes in handy. What happens in this strategy is that Company C will go to a reputed financial institution in Bangladesh and get it to issue something called the letter of credit with broker B as the beneficiary. So basically, the bank in Bangladesh tells the Indian broker, don't worry, I will make the payment of 5 crore with 20 lakhs in commission to you on behalf of company C. And now that the broker has an assurance from a reputed bank, he will take that letter of credit to go to his reputed bank in India and ask them to issue another letter of credit to company A in the US. So here's where the Indian bank assures the American company that the bank will pay the company 5 crore rupees on behalf of the broker. So now company A feels safe about the Indian bank paying them money, and now they ship their heavy machinery knowing that once the transaction is complete, it will be paid by the Indian bank. So at the end of the day, the broker is also assured about being paid by the Bangladeshi bank and the American company is assured about being paid by the Indian bank. So this way, the credit risk has been removed from the transaction and all the parties have been benefited. This made it extremely easy for the Bangladeshi businessmen to actually set up their textile manufacturing business. Eventually, that ended up giving jobs to millions of people in Bangladesh. And this is where the second policy came in. Now, if you look at the above example, you will see that if the Bangladeshi businessman is imposed with an import duty of just 5%, then he has to pay 25 lakh rupees in taxes alone. But at the same time, if the Bangladeshi government decides to do away with the import duty, then the government will lose out on a significant amount of income. So here's where the Bangladeshi government came up with a policy innovation called the policy of duty drawback facilities through bonded warehouses. If Shyam wants to import his machinery, raw materials and replacements without import duty, then all the finished products that he produces using these materials must be kept in bonded warehouses, wherein the product must compulsorily be used for exports only. And this is checked by the Special Customs Authority, who actually check the import and export containers going to and from the bonded factory. This way, the Bangladeshi government is able to provide ease of business for the businessmen who are exporting the products, and at the same time, they do not lose out on the import duty income for all the domestic products. And lastly, in spite of all the political instability, Bangladesh has improved its infrastructure and connectivity by a large extent, and they have done that through transportation and logistics improvement. This is how Bangladesh had been laying its foundation since 30 years, from 1971 to 2001. And here's where the table started turning. From early 2000s onwards, the Chinese labor cost started increasing. In fact, by 2012, the cost of labor in China was so high as compared to Bangladesh.
तो जी ये थी वीडियो, और आपने वीडियो में देखा कि कितनी तफसील के साथ ये बात बताई जा रही है कि किस तरह बांग्लादेश ने मुश्किलात का सामना किया, किस तरह बांग्लादेश ने गुर्बत से जंग की, और बांग्लादेश के अंदर अवाम की क्या हालत हो चुकी थी। बांग्लादेश के ऊपर ट्रस्ट नहीं था, बैरून ममालिक का ये कहना था कि ये एक बास्केट केस है और ये कुछ भी नहीं कर सकेगा। आज बांग्लादेश ने निकल के दिखाया, आज बांग्लादेश ने अपनी एक पहचान बनाई है गारमेंट्स के अंदर। दुनिया के अंदर तो ऐसे कई एसेट थे जिसके ज़रिए उन्होंने अपनी पहचान बनाई, लेकिन बांग्लादेश के पास ऐसा क्या था कि ये दुनिया में अपनी एक पहचान बना पाता। लेकिन तब ही बांग्लादेश ने एक बड़ा कदम उठाया और गारमेंट्स के अंदर अपनी पहचान बनाने का आगाज़ किया। आज बांग्लादेश दुनिया का दूसरा सबसे बड़ा गारमेंट्स का एक्सपोर्टर है चाइना के बाद, और बांग्लादेश ने ये साबित किया है कि अगर आप मेहनत करें, अगर आप जदोजहद करें, तो आपके सामने कोई भी चीज़ नाकाम नहीं होगी, कोई भी चीज़ नामुमकिन नहीं होगी। बांग्लादेश ने हिम्मत नहीं हारी, भारत को ब्रोकर बनाकर, उसको पैसे देकर ये मशीनरी मंगवाई बांग्लादेश के अंदर। आज बांग्लादेश की मईशत अपने पांव पे खड़ी है और दुनिया देख रही है कि बांग्लादेश ने किन हालात से निकलकर आज दुनिया के डेवलप कंट्री की तरफ बढ़ रहा है, और आज साउथ एशिया का टाइगर बनने की जानब बढ़ रहा है। और आज बांग्लादेश, आज का बांग्लादेश भारत को भी बीट कर चुका है गारमेंट्स के अंदर, और भारत 5वें पोजीशन पे है और बांग्लादेश दूसरी पोजीशन पे। तो ये बांग्लादेश की बड़ी कामयाबी है, बांग्लादेश के लोगों की अनथक मेहनत का नतीजा है कि आज बांग्लादेश एक डेवलप कंट्री बन चुका है। जीडीपी की बात करें, मईशत की बात करें, जीडीपी पर कैपिटा की बात करें या उनकी एक्सपोर्ट की बात करें, तो आज बांग्लादेश ने हर लिहाज से खुद को साबित किया है, दुनिया के परफेक्ट मईशतों में अपना शुमार करवाया है। तो ये थी आज की वीडियो। आप इस वीडियो के बारे में क्या कहना चाहते हैं, ज़रूर कमेंट करके हमें बताइएगा। बहुत शुक्रिया।